Well, good day, everybody. Today we have with us two board members from the emergency shelter in Northern Kentucky, Emily Toebbe and Jamie Weaver. Jamie is the president and Emily is the vice president of the board, and their backgrounds are in banking and compensation and HR, but on their volunteer side have been serving on this board for some time from ESNKY. So first of all, thanks guys for giving some of your time today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You bet. So let's talk first about the shelter. So the organization, we oftentimes hear of ESNKY and the work that it's been doing to take care of guests in the wintertime. But maybe just take a second, Jamie, I will start off with you. If you could just give us an overview. What is the emergency shelter in Northern Kentucky?
Well, thank you. And one of the first things I think we'd like to share is right now we're open and we're serving right now in our community 10 to 11 guests on a regular basis as they're working in between the homelessness they've experienced to permanent housing. We've had a huge success story here in the last week where two individuals were able to be roommates together and are now living, independently, as well as we're also offering a shower service on a daily basis where we see many guests within the community come in each and every day, having those services, and then also providing them laundry, and just ways to kind of bring them back in and give them that sense of self-dignity that they deserve and to go forward in there, to have that day go better for them.
What a great story for them to tell, to have their key to an apartment or what have you. That's great. One of the things, the organization itself, how many individuals will you typically serve in a year, Jamie or Emily, if either of you have that number?
It's an interesting question. It's a tough question to answer today. And I think that's probably where you're getting the hesitancy from both Jamie and myself under normal circumstances. So outside of a global pandemic, outside of some of the economic pressures that we're seeing these days, we would normally service up to 75 guests a night in the winter. As we pivot towards our new building, we'll continue to work with the fire marshal to see what that number might be revised to this winter in order to ensure that our guests are safe, that we can keep social distancing in place, and that we can abide by the guidelines that are set forth both by our state government as well as the CDC. We are looking, unfortunately, at about 15 per night.
And that's an interesting point. So let's focus on that, because actually my question primarily was going to be the number of individuals in a normal time you would serve in a given 12-month period. But I think the point you make is key, that here we're dealing with COVID. Prior to that, we had a very, very, thankfully, with fairly mild winter, but you still had to house people. You had to deal with challenges of occupancy, et cetera. But new building, hopefully that number cannot solve the problems of Northern Kentucky, but definitely will put a big dent in the issue of allowing for people to be off the street and be safe under a roof. But let's speak to the point of the guest for a moment. What's in your mind? What's the biggest misconception about the guests that your organization serves?
I think I'll start out real quick and just letting everybody know that majority of the guests were not perpetually homeless. These are individuals that had one little hiccup that came into their lives that turned that life upside down. And that is where our motto of life-saving, life-changing comes and works in. And, these obstacles that they're facing on a day-to-day basis are pieces that we can help on maybe 1, 2, 3 days to whether they can get back on the right track. And then there's the other programs and services that we do offer that may take 2 to 3 months where we're helping them save the money to get into an apartment in order to have the permanent housing.
Great point. Emily, you've now been involved in the board a couple of years. Is there a perspective that you wish individuals knew in the community about the guests you take care of and help?
Yeah, I'll tack on one thing to what Jamie said, is that most of our guests are actually employed. A lot of folks look at our guests and assume that, as they're struggling with homelessness, they're also struggling with, participating fully in the local economy. And that just isn't the case with many of our folks. Many of them do work, but because of some life circumstances or potentially, what they're making at their current role, they're not able to afford a home of their own. And that's where we step in.
And I think that maybe one of the things that you pointed out to me before is that there really are different definitions of homeless that are totally independent and totally dealing with different backgrounds, different reasonings, I guess, for why they're in that situation. But In terms of the average stay that guests are in and being served, what's that average stay that someone is being helped?
We can really, it goes on a different basis, but really when we decide to say the average that comes out to may only be 2 to 3 nights that the average stay would last. So that's a big misconception as we're on that topic of we're not a place that's housing, guests on 100 nights during the winter. This might truly be one night is the only difference they have, but that will be the night that saves their life when it is cold. But it'll also be the nights during the summer that gives them a chance to have a shower.
And what's your take on the number of agencies that are dealing with this issue in the community? Do you feel like ESNKY is the only one? Do you feel like there are a lot of organizations all working on the same issue? Maybe you can speak to that a little bit as well.
I think that we work with a lot of partner organizations and a lot of similar organizations that all tend to serve different facets of a similar population, right? So we partner very closely with a number of groups that, unlike us, may have more of a focus on women and children, or partner with another group that may have more of a focus on teenagers. But I think we're all looking at the same population, the same group of people that is struggling to make ends meet, the same group of people that may be more at risk as a result of not having a shelter over their heads. And we're all looking to, really link arms and do the same thing for these folks, which is ensure that, needless deaths and needless harm doesn't occur, and ultimately to help resolve homelessness in the region.
Great point. We interviewed Kim Webb, your director, as well as the director of Welcome House, and we've had a lot of input from Brighton Center and other organizations like that who all talk about this, this continuum of care, this group, the effort that tries to make an improvement in individual lives, which is huge. I do want to just jump to a different part of this discussion, and I was wondering, you both are volunteer board members. Why do you serve? Why do you get involved, and why do you even spend your time? You both have lives outside of work, you have families. Why do you serve?
I'll let you go first, Emily.
Okay. So in my professional life, I work in HR, I'm a director of compensation. And before I took on that role, and before I really, entered the corporate world, when I was in college, and even before then, I was working to advocate for homelessness and affordable housing. In fact, my degree is in urban and regional planning with a focus on low-income housing. So pretty far removed from college, but this gives me an opportunity to kind of go back to those roots and go back to something that I'm passionate about. And it gives me that opportunity to stretch myself outside of my for-profit work, if you will.
Great point. Great insight. Jamie, how about you?
I was really lucky to have a mentor early on in my career as a banker that, our piece as community partners is to be involved in our community and to be out there and to give that time and to volunteer that time. And as I've gotten on 2 or 3 different boards in my career, the thing that really drove me to the emergency shelter in Northern Kentucky was our ability for change and what we're able to do right now. We know that we're making huge changes in our community and in the lives of our guests on a day-to-day basis. And I think that there's no better reward for us as individuals that are volunteering the time than to know that you're, an agent of change in these times.
Well, you've said that well, and thank you for your all involvement in the board, and of course the great work that you and your staff have been doing, and we're looking forward to down the road celebrating the outcomes of the new shelter location and the services you're going to be able to provide there. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.